I can tell you a little bit about the way we left, which was very memorable. We took a truck. Somehow we managed to get a ride on a truck from Budapest to the border, and that took, you know, the better part of a day to drive. And we were stopped on the way. It was a truck full of people from Budapest with suitcases. It was pretty obvious what was happening, but we were stopped on the way by Russian patrols, and the explanation was that these are people who live near the border and were just returning. Then they were shooting flares up in the air to light up, and you know, to just for visibility, and there was some shots were fired. I think they were more like warning shots, not directly at us, but it was close enough to make us feel real uncomfortable.
They had to escape from Hungary because the Soviet armies occupied the city where I grew up. So I was about 21, 22. I always loved to travel when I grew up, but I never thought I will go and live in America.
Radio Free Europe and the Voice of America encouraged the Hungarian freedom fighters, but the U.S. was not willing to intervene with military force because of superpower politics. However, Austria's Interior Minister Oskar Helmer did not hesitate to offer asylum. Hungarian refugees streamed into Vienna.
Then we stayed in Vienna for 3 months. For each nationality there was a quota, and for Hungarians it must have been something like 800 a year. And here were like 200,000 people. Half of them wanted to come to the United States, so it was very difficult to get on the list. And we ended up waiting it out and then coming to the United States in February.
President Eisenhower and the U.S. Congress quickly enacted legislation to increase Hungarian refugee quotas from 6,500 to 21,000, and eventually 80,000 immigrants. Approximately 200 refugees settled in central New York.
I wanted to come here because of its history of supporting and representing freedom. It took 8 days to New York City. Wow. It was an amazing experience to see New York City.
Yeah.
When the boat approached New York, you actually see the Statue of Liberty, and it's like in a fairy tale.
They used a World War II propeller, one of those old propeller planes, and there were like 200 Hungarian refugees in this plane, none of whom had ever flown before, and it was a real rough crossing. It took about 37 hours to cross from Vienna. With stops, we flew from Vienna to Shannon, Ireland. In Shannon, we got, you know, this great midnight treat or breakfast or whatever. They served up this huge meal with Irish coffee. I mean, here these kids are getting Irish coffee. And I think that's what caused some of the problems, because it was so stormy that everybody threw up after that. All the Hungarian refugees that came to this country at that time went through Camp Kilmer.
Camp Kilmer, near New Brunswick, New Jersey, was a military center during World War II that was reopened for the Hungarian refugees. This picture of Vice President Nixon at Camp Kilmer was taken in December 1956. Jewish Family Services, the Council of Churches, and Catholic Charities were religious organizations that helped many refugees. Elmwood Presbyterian Church on South Ave in Syracuse sponsored Marta Dosa and her family. They lived in the basement of this church for 3 months. Refugees also helped one another.
So that's Dr. George Jeffrey. Can you take pictures of him? When he arrived here, must have been about 1940. He came over from Hungary. He was a physician, and he left his wife and his daughter back in Hungary, hoping to bring them over after he was established here. But then the war broke out, and they were stuck in Hungary, and both of them were taken away to Auschwitz, where they perished. So he was a very helpful former refugee who helped us in our transition. And Lillian Slutzker was another friend who actually came over from Hungary after World War II, and she lived in Syracuse.
Lily and her husband own Manny's on Marshall Street by the Syracuse University campus. One of their many legacies to the Central New York community is the Lillian and Emanuel Slutzker Center for International Services at Syracuse University, which supports students from around the world. The Hungarians who settled in Syracuse in 1956 still get together regularly. They have contributed in big and small ways to our community. Hungarian refugees in Central New York illustrate the importance of the individual in history. John Botke's father started a translation service that helped many new immigrants.
That's when he started the translation service, and he went into real estate, so he had two businesses going. And with the translation service, I know that he was in contact with immigrants, with newcomers to America.
Marta Dosa became a professor of library studies at Syracuse University. She worked for the United Nations and helped to establish libraries in developing countries around the world.
Hungary was very beautiful, and the people were always caring. I think of the people in Hungary as caring. It had an amazing power to survive. I think of that power as very cultural, spiritual, but also very pragmatic, very strong.